welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here for our last Cabral HouseCall of the week, our second Cabral HouseCall of the weekend. And as always, looking forward to seeing what our community has to say. Each and every weekend, I open up this iPad of mine. I look at the Cabral Concept HouseCalls document, which contains thousands of our community's questions. I simply go through them one by one in the order that they've come in. And we are now at, let's see, November 10th. So it looks like we're about 5 weeks. We've been maintaining about 5-6 weeks behind on your questions. So people ask all the time, will I be notified when my question has been answered? It's not that type of service. We do hope that you tune in every single weekend. I appreciate your listens, your downloads. And as always, I really appreciate your reviews. If you've been listening to the show, if you enjoyed the show, if you could leave a review on whatever podcast player you listen to now while you're listening to the show, that would be tremendous. Really appreciate it. I literally read every single review out there, and I appreciate all of the support as well. All right, let's get into our questions for the week. As I said, coming in on 11/9. So 11/9 starts it today. And the first one is from Ryan. And Ryan is asking, have heard recently from Ben Greenfield, Dr. McCullough, Dave Asprey, and Robert Slovak about the potential health benefits of baking soda and or potassium bicarb. It has been mentioned to work in a similar fashion to alkaline phosphatase for help with gut permeability and longevity. Thoughts on the daily consumption of a little bit of aluminum-free baking soda or potassium bicarb? All right, Ryan, great question. So many years ago, I first started studying bioregulatory medicine. And for me, if you were to put me in like one box of what it is that I do, I would consider myself, I consider myself an integrative health practitioner, that's for sure. But if you were to say, what do you do? It would be, I blend bioregulatory medicine with Ayurvedic medicine. That's what I do. Like, that is without a doubt. Because even though I love labs, and lab testing is the number one thing that you should do if you're struggling with your health or weight loss or any issue, because it pinpoints what isn't working. Like, that's the truth. It pinpoints it. But here's the deal. When you have the information, you need to know what to do with it. That's why not every functional medicine doctor is created equal. Not every practitioner is equal. It's like, what do you do with that? You need a deep base to draw upon. And bioregulatory medicine is unbelievable. But you just asked a question that actually has a huge variant to it. Should you take sodium bicarb or potassium bicarb? Well, the answer is radically different based on your body. So sodium is very different than potassium. The two balance each other. Let's say you're someone that's dealing with what's called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS. Would you want to give that person potassium bicarb? The answer would be no, because you're most likely going to push them to more of a parasympathetic nervous system state. They're already most likely depleted of a lot of their sodium reserves, because at one point they were hyperadrenal or hypocortical stimulated, meaning producing more aldosterone, producing more cortisol, holding and retaining more sodium. Then they crashed, dumped their sodium. Now they're left with a lower reserve of sodium. They most likely have lower blood pressure. So would I use potassium bicarb or sodium bicarb with that person? Well, I'd probably be using sodium chloride. I'd probably be using more of a sea salt, and sodium bicarb would probably be okay. Now, what if this person had higher levels of blood pressure? Well, again, not a treatment protocol. We don't provide any medical advice or treatments or cures or diagnosis on the podcast. But for that person, I would give them more potassium bicarb, right? So it's always asking about who. Just remember this. It's always the who, not the what, right? Because there's many things that we can do, but the who is more important. So when people give blanket advice, it can be very dangerous. But all the people that you named, I think are great. I really do. Like, I think they're great. I don't know how. So this might just be me. I don't claim to know everything in the world. I don't claim to know that. That would be pretty amazing. That is certainly not a gift that I've gotten. So here's the thing. But I've studied quite a bit. And I don't know how the potassium bicarb and the sodium bicarb would be used as the go-to for healing the gut. Don't see that. I've given many gut permeability protocols, and none of them would include sodium bicarb or potassium bicarb, especially since they're just that you want to use those if you want to add a little bit more of an alkaline substance to the body, right? That's what you would do. So I'm actually going a little long on this question, but let me just get to the crux of it. Sodium bicarb and potassium bicarb, we use, for example, in our alkalizing vitamin C, potassium bicarb, calcium bicarb, magnesium bicarb. And the reason is this: bicarb allows for more of an alkaline-based solution, so you don't get burning in your stomach when taking high dosages of vitamin C, right, from the ascorbic acid. So that's why we do it. We don't do it to give you extra of those minerals. We do it to buffer. But you can actually dice that bicarb, and you can use it to help alkalize the bloodstream slightly. Will your body bring it back down to a normal pH? Absolutely. But you brought in some more alkaline-based minerals. So there you go. I think I'm going to keep it at that. One thing I say too, I typically recommend for water, adding a little bit of pinch of Himalayan sea salt and a squeeze of lime. That's a natural Gatorade. What is that? Sodium from the sea salt, potassium from the lime, right? So I've been recommending that for many, many years. I don't know the specific what you're going for, but could you add a little bit of sodium bicarb to your water in the morning? You could. You just wouldn't want to do it with food because it's going to really shut down stomach acid production. Hopefully that helps. All right, Ryan's up. Maybe the same Ryan, but let's see. There is an argument against saturated fats for their purported role in developing insulin resistance. Certainly, there can be a temporary state of insulin resistance upon the ingestion of saturated fats, and I'm mostly aware of how and why this happens. However, there seems to be some say this isn't necessarily a bad thing and should be differentiated from the chronic insulin resistance present in metabolic syndrome. However, my mind seems to think that regularly invoking a state of temporary insulin resistance is kind of like just being chronically insulin resistant, if you know what I mean. I've read this temporary state of insulin resistance can actually be used to improve satiety and help with weight loss. Would love your thoughts on this physiologic response to saturated fats. Okay. Yeah, it's a complicated question, but I know exactly what you're talking about. I would not look at insulin resistance as a good thing in any regard. And I would not look at it as a good thing in terms of satiety, because I agree, like if your blood sugar levels are up, you may feel more satiated, right? I don't think that's a good thing. Now, it goes back to saturated fats and this temporary insulin resistance. Well, in some people, agreed. And I know that you know a lot of the mechanisms, so I won't get too deep. The issue really is about chronic states. For example, you would never want to look at your blood after a hard workout. It would look like you're dying. Levels would be, after a hard workout, you just wouldn't see the balanced effect for at least a few hours after the workout. So it would look like all sorts of things are going haywire in your body. Like it would look potentially like you had cancer. Like it would not look good. So we can't confuse what happens directly after an assault on the body. And I know it's funny to say that with eating, but believe it or not, eating causes oxidative stress. It causes our blood sugar to rise much of the time, like all sorts of different things, but our body, it compensates like it should. And these are a good thing because we need to eat food, right? It's like we need to consume good food. So I'm not an advocate though of going overboard in saturated fats. I know some people are like, well, it doesn't cause high cholesterol, it does. In some people, it does. It does. Like, again, if you're a practitioner, you see it happen. You just can see it happen. Does it happen in everyone? No. And I would venture, if I had to put a number on it, I would say it's somewhere around a third of the people, maybe a little bit less. And we know that since about 22 to 26% of the population have the ApoE4 gene, that allele, that 4-4 or a 3-4, 4-4 is a little less than 10%, but the 3-4 is more common. So we know that in some way they're inhibited in some way, possibly by those saturated fats. Listen, I say this, you don't need to go wild on your fats. You can keep them at 20%, 30% of your diet. You don't need to go crazy. For the people that know specifically that they have that allele, I even think they could probably do 20% and they could just make it more monounsaturated fat. But that doesn't mean you can't eat any saturated fat. And it doesn't mean that I think saturated fat's bad for you. I don't. I just don't think that you should go overboard with it because we know that the high level of lipids or lipid peroxides can cause issues in the body. And we know that the cell membranes can be affected by it. And we know that those cell membranes are what we need in order to get glucose from the bloodstream into the cells. So that's a long answer for saying eat a normal diet. Don't worry about the short-term effects if the long-term body is staying balanced. Okay, good question though. Mike is up next. Hi, Dr. Ball. I was wondering if it's okay to do the CBO finisher with the mold toxicity protocol at the same time. This is a great question. And I think I actually answered this a bit yesterday, but I just want to reiterate, just in case I did not. We want to do CBO protocol first, then intestinal cleanse, or intestinal cleanse at any period during the CBO protocol is really fine. Any period between weeks 5 and 12. Then we want to do the CBO finisher. And if you're moving on to the mold protocol, you can do the mold protocol at the same exact time. And then halfway through the mold protocol, do the intestinal cleanse, which contains all the binders. All right. So there you go. Good question. Mike's up again. Hi, Dr. Ball. I want to know if you recommend using binders daily to remove mold, heavy metals, and other materials. Good question. I don't. So the issue is that people go overboard with binders. Like they just go bananas with binders. And the reason is that if a little is good, then more must be better, right? Well, that's not the case. And the issue is that binders, if you use good binders, well, they bind up a lot of the nutrients that we're trying to get in our bodies. So I don't want them in the intestines all the time. So what I like to do is I like to sweat them out. I think a sauna is fantastic. I think good cruciferous vegetables are very important. I think getting 35 grams of fiber per day is important. That will help. That moves things along. If you're constipated at all, use our constipation protocol or simply use the magnesium citrate at night and the alkalizing vitamin C in the morning to get the bowels going. Have 1 to 2 bowel movements per day. What else? And then, yes, once or twice during the mold protocol, I recommend using the binders, which last for about a 5 to 7 day period of time. So out of the 8-week mold protocol, I recommend using the binders like at week 4 and then after it's done. That's how I would do it. So hopefully that's helpful, Mike. Paul says, in a study you mentioned neck gaiters causing water droplets to break up into smaller particles, making gaiters more likely to infect others. Why would a gaiter cause a breakup of water droplets any more than any other mask? Cotton masks and surgical masks couldn't do the same thing? Paul, great question. So again, this is research. This is not my words. I know people got so upset about this, and it's just not people. A couple people did, and they said that I did not believe in wearing masks. I never said that. I actually was the person that said we should give free masks, free N95 masks, the ones that we know work. We should give those to anybody high risk. They're maybe 20 cents to make. Why can't the government, we pay a good amount in taxes, why can't we give those out free? I don't understand that. I mean, that actually has been shown to help stop the spread. Okay, but I digress. So the research that I showed you is multiple universities. One I believe was Northwestern, the other was Duke University, showed that single ply or gaiters specifically, not only do they not work for stopping the spread of the virus, they actually make it worse. And that is because the single ply, there's no moisture barrier. And when you talk, the micron particles move through the gaiter mask. They're initially larger. They get broken up by the fabric material itself, and they spread into smaller particles in your in the air around you, right? Up to 14 feet. They don't fall to the ground right away. They could be up in the air for approximately about 31 minutes. I know that's pretty close, but that's the research. Now, it could be 6 minutes in higher humidity. Higher humidity? Yes. In higher humidity. Is it humidity or is it dry air? I apologize. I'm not going to give you the exact quote on this. Potential, I can't remember, so I apologize. But it's one or the other, meaning like if it's more humid, it drops to the ground faster. I can't remember, I apologize. Okay, but that has nothing to do with masks. So here's the thing. Why doesn't it happen then with the light blue surgical masks or N95s? Okay, they have a moisture barrier that helps to prevent the spit, basically you can't even see it, invisible micron particles leaving your mouth, from moving into the air. So a 3-ply cloth mask has actually been shown to work. A blue surgical mask, which is 3-ply and a moisture barrier, how it's woven, has been proven to work, about 70% effective. And the N95 has been proven to be 100% effective if worn correctly. So again, it's not my work. I'm just passing it on. And the reason I say it is like, I don't want people to actually believe they could go around their sick grandparent with a Gator mask and they're not going to spread it like they are. So wear an N95 around your at-risk population people, okay? So really, really important. And if you're at risk yourselves, wear something that's going to block it. And that would be an N95 or a tightly fitting blue surgical. All right. And those are about $1 to purchase. Okay. How much time do we have left? Oh, good. We can answer one or two more. Patrick's up next. Hey, Dr. Cabral. Love the work you're doing and enjoy listening to all of your podcasts multiple times. Thanks, Patrick. I've been using the sauna at my gym a few days a week for the last 2 years and love it. But for the past 6 months, the saunas are closed due to the virus. Do you know if sauna suits are a good way to help sweat out toxins, or would Epsom salt baths be a healthier option? Keep up the good work. And you or your team are the best. Thanks, Patrick. I really appreciate that. That's quite nice of you to say. So I'm not a huge fan of the plastic suits, the sweatsuits, because they're plastic. That's the main reason why. A great option at home is the PEMF mat that I spoke about. You can go to stephencabral.com/resources, check it out. And then for like 20 cents, you can buy those foil sheets that keep the heat in, and you could, even if you're worried about the aluminum foil, which you have a right to be, you could put a sheet over you and then the foil, and it will basically trap all the heat. So the PMF mats are great. You could also buy the infrared sauna that I talk about at home. So that's going to be about the same price. Then you could do just what you named. It's like a good thought for sure is to do a hot Epsom salt bath, no doubt about it. So that would be a great one. So all of those are suggestions that you could absolutely do. And I think a good sauna is a great investment. I really do. So they're one of my favorite things. I purchased an expensive one last summer. I'd wanted one for years. Finally, I just did it, and I bought a barrel sauna. It's amazing. So I use that. I have an infrared sauna, a portable one, one of the pop-up ones. And I like that one. I liked my PMF mat better. So there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, Patrick, for writing in. And the Epsom salt baths, by the way, are fantastic. A hot Epsom salt bath, really, really great. Put a couple lavender drops in or eucalyptus drops, turn off the lights, light a little candle, have yourself a little meditation session, maybe put on some binaural beats. That's a great thing to do. All right, last question of the day. Do I have time for it? Yes. Andrew is up. Hello, Dr. Ball. First off, I want to thank you for your work and paying forward everything you've learned, studied, and experienced in your life. For the benefit of myself and others, could you tell your story and explain how you kept your health routine and eating in check while you were recovering and traveling around the world during your studies? I think this would be an interesting topic and could help a lot of us structure ourselves through this busy life. Appreciate you. Andrew, it's a great question. I'll probably expand upon this into a larger podcast. So right now, I'll give you a couple-minute answer. So by the time I went overseas, I was already well. That's the nice thing. But I've gotten healthier over the years. So essentially, from 17 years old to 27 years old, I was trying to find my answers. I did a lot of things. Some worked. But no matter what, I was always relapsing at least 3 or 4 times a year. I was getting pneumonia all through my my early 20s, like 22 to 26 years old. I had pneumonia every single winter. I would get sinus infections every single winter. Brutal. Met my mentor at 27. Just needed the final piece of the puzzle. Honestly, I had like 80% of it. I needed the last 20%. My mentor, Dr. Pete, showed me how to combine functional medicine, Ayurvedic, functional medicine lab testing, Ayurvedic medicine, and a bit about genetics. I just didn't know about methylation defects, my detox defects, all my messed up genetics. But again, I didn't really need to know as much about that. It mattered, but I just knew that I needed a little bit more B vitamins. So I started taking B6 and B12. I started using more magnesium. Like all those things were very beneficial. Learned about my dosha. So it all came together. Then I started going overseas in my late 20s, early 30s when I was back at school. What else can I tell you? Now, how did I eat? Well, here's the thing. I kept it super simple. Like that's the thing. It's like I keep things so simple. When people try to come up with gourmet meals that have 20 ingredients in them, it's so hard. If you saw my family's dinner at night, you'd be like, oh, you eat broccoli, you have rice or potatoes, like sweet potatoes, yams, purple Japanese yams. You cook a protein and you add olive oil or guacamole to it. It's like, yeah, that's what we do. Taco Tuesdays, well, we have cassava flour shells or cassava chips. We've got either a meat with that or black beans. Salsa, like we keep it uncomplicated. So what did I do overseas? Well, the truth is this. I brought my shakes with me. I didn't have my daily nutritional support back then, but I had other shakes that I was doing. That was my breakfast. Here's why. A lot of times I only got staff meals. So I was at these hospitals and clinics, and I always give the example of being in India. And I mean, it is what it is. I was in some very poor sections, and I had rice. I had chapatis, which is essentially like a flatbread made of coconut flour and sometimes some wheat. And I had soya, which is basically just gluten. It's gelatinous gluten. It's not good. But who am I to complain when that for them is a lot and I was given it free? Free, I guess. So listen, it gave me perspective. I understood how lucky I was, because even when I made it to like their convenience mart a couple miles away, which by the way, I had to go by like the little buggy, the little rickshaw, and they called them tuk-tuks. And I just remember that. It just popped in my head as making me laugh. So I still wasn't able to get access to like really good stuff. I would get like a jar of almond butter, and I would get, sometimes some like crackers. Like there was nothing. Like that was it. So I didn't eat great a lot of times when I was overseas. That's the truth. Sometimes I ate really well at really nice Ayurvedic clinics, and sometimes I didn't. So what I always started with was my shake that was easy to travel with. I always had that. And I would just try to eat rice, a protein. I would just try to keep things simple. So I got really sick actually from eating over in India one time as well. That's a story for another day. So do stay tuned for that. But hopefully that was helpful, Andrew. And I will definitely do a longer show on basically how to eat when it's a lot of times out of your control. Thank you everyone for tuning into today's show. Truly appreciate you. And as always, if this was helpful, please do feel free to share these shows and answers and advice with anyone you believe it could serve. And don't forget to tune in tomorrow. Each and every Monday is our Mindset and Motivation Mondays, the best way to start the week. Take care.